Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, exploring the issues affecting all of our lives. I'm your host, Austin Harris. It's been said that you can't drive a car by constantly looking into the rearview mirror, yet we all can accept that looking back can help us avoid making mistakes that may yet lie ahead. On today's episode, we take a walk down memory lane and revisit the Cayman Islands of yesteryear, as seen through the eyes of someone who lived it and is still living it, and maybe, just maybe, we might learn something from those who came before. With me in studios, it is my pleasure to welcome historian, songwriter, and all-around son of the soil, my friend and yours, Mr. George Chollette. Mr. George, or should I say Brother George, welcome to Let's Talk. Thank you for being our guest here today.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. You know, we've been friends for years.
We have.
Way back, and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent, sir. Well, I'm thrilled to have you in studios, and I want to make a comment. When we had our first episode, I believe you are one of our very first, or if not the first, commentator to the program, and I thank you. You've been watching since then, and
Yep.
I hope you continue to enjoy it. Now you get to watch yourself.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, no problem.
Well, whilst you and I have known each other, certainly all of my life, for our viewing public, let's start with a little bit about yourself. Tell us about George Chollette, who you are, and also, I think, of interest, what year were you born here in the Cayman Islands?
I was born in 1950,
Okay.
and back then, reminiscing for now
Yeah.
to back then, it was much, much better those days, but we didn't know it.
Right.
But about me, it's nothing much. I grew up in a single parent. My father was a seaman all his life. He died at sea. I was 13 years old when he died.
Sorry to hear
I
that.
left school and I hit what they call the boondocks.
Okay.
Hit the docks. And I was a big guy, very strong, and I had ambition, and I didn't have a problem with employment. Never, if I was able today, I can get employment. I didn't have a problem with work.
Right.
I worked, and people saw that in me, the old folks, and I was always employed.
All right.
But I grew up with just my mother in Georgetown, Mary Street. That's where I was born.
Amongst your professions, you say you always were employed. The one that I remember is you used to be a police officer, constable of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service.
Yep, I used to be a police officer. I used to be the bailiff for the Grand Court as well. I used to do construction way back in the 60s and the 70s. I came up under the arches. And I hope that I'll be able to give you one of my books that I wrote a few years back. I think it was 2017, and it tells all about my growing up.
Yes.
But I'll get you a copy.
Indeed.
Down the line.
You said one of your books. How many books have you published?
One.
Yeah.
One,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
A copy of my book. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
But I grew up with the arches, and in those days, Cayman was much, much different than it is today.
Indeed.
Much.
Well, that's what we hope maybe we can touch on a little bit in our discussion today. Starting, I think, maybe with your childhood. What were some of your most vivid memories of growing up in the Cayman Islands as a young boy?
Well, I grew up on Mary Street.
Okay.
They call it Mary Street now, but it was called Maryland in my time when I was growing up. And they had the MacTaggart, the leader of government business. He grew up there. We had the Arches, we had the Russells, we had the Smiths, and we joined in to what they call Shaden Road today.
Okay.
So Maryland and Shaden Road were the place. And then we had, well, it's called Watlers Road now, but commonly the old Cayman call it Dog City.
Right.
So
right.
those three joined together,
Okay.
plus Sound Road. That was Georgetown.
That was the center.
That was Georgetown.
Were the families who lived in your neighborhood and the surrounding areas considered close with one another?
in that time, everybody was one family.
Right.
That's when I stop and think about how Cayman has changed so much. Everybody, for instance, those days we didn't have nothing like money circulating, you know.
Okay.
It only the merchants, the Marians,
Mm-hmm.
the Thompson, Mr. Buller Thompson, and those days, there wasn't no crooks that time. We had Wilco,
Okay.
Comarts,
Right. Right.
those days. And it's a Shirley Macfield,
Uh-huh.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the day Captain Pond Dias down Rock Hole.
Yes.
That was it. But everybody was a big family. Um, we had a lot of fruit trees.
Mm-hmm.
Cayman was wonderful. We had a lot of shade all around the town. Now all those trees are gone. I remember 2 guinea trees
Right.
right where the old library is, one on each side. That was in front of the town hall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One here where the Heroes Square is there.
Yeah.
They had a big guinea tree there and one right next to the library on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we used to be on as children, as boys, a group of us boys.
Okay.
We didn't call us gangs.
Right.
We wasn't gang because we weren't, we didn't do nothing bad. We done badness amongst ourselves.
Right.
And we got beat.
Right.
But we didn't commit no crimes.
Indeed.
You
Indeed.
know. But those days we would go now like I remember Mr. Harold Borden. He was one of the fishermen. That was Mr. Buller Thompson, Bing and George Thompson's father there,
Okay.
and Mr. Norbrook Thompson. They had a fish shop right where the port is now,
Okay.
in front of Emsley Memorial Church.
Yes.
And as boys coming from school, Mr. Buller Thompson used to come in those days. We would catch goggle eyes in the net.
Okay.
And all of us schoolboys had a little knife.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Buller Thompson, they had so much goggle eyes. People come from north side, the whole island, even Cayman Brac,
Mm-hmm.
to get goggle eyes in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of us as boys would clean. You just scrape the scales off the goggle eyes, right?
Yeah.
And got them. And Mr. Buller would tell us, he said, 2 for me, 1 for you. 2 for me, 1 for you. And all of us had our fish.
Right. Right.
Because those nets were not pull up the thousands of goggle eyes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some days all night we cleaning. He come in like 3 o'clock in the evening, all 7 in the morning, still we cleaning fish.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, that's how it was. So everybody had food because money was limited.
Yes.
It only the wealthy people like the Marians, I said,
Mm-hmm.
and the Thompsons had money.
Right.
And the Arches.
Right. Right.
Because, okay, my mother had a big breadfruit tree, and breadfruit trees was out of waste in
Right.
Cayman.
Everybody had one, at least
Yeah.
2 in the yard.
So Mr. Buller Thompson now, Mr. Harold Borden, sorry, he is coming home with yellow tails on a piece of thatch rope,
Right.
walking, going home now.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed in Mama's house, and Mama say, Harold, you going to fish? Yep, Lynn. And he gave her 2 fish, and he said, give me 2 of them breadfruit.
Right.
That's your food. That's your dinner.
Right.
That's it for the day.
Right.
We lived in love.
Well, that's what I was gathering, whether it be the neighborhood that you grew up with and the families you mentioned, or the friends gathering under the guinea tree. It seemed like sharing was the order of the day,
Yep.
and sharing of everything, whether it be fun or food.
Everything. We shared everything. And the part with that, we used to pound almond seeds. Someone used to get rocks. I had a little hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to put them in a bottle. And that was our snacks.
Really?
Sometimes that was our lunch
Okay.
for school,
Okay.
And the part with that, but everybody shared. Don't care, they would come from Rock Hole.
Mm-hmm.
We were all one.
Yes.
One family. All one.
Yes. When I was growing up, my brothers and I, my father particularly would often remind us boys how strict he grew up in, a
Yeah.
strict family, how strict his parents were. And I think he said it, largely to remind us how good we had it. But I suspect you grew up under the rod, so to speak. And I wonder, who was stricter, your mother or your father?
Well, like I say, my father didn't spend much time in Cayman.
Yes.
Because in those days, everybody sailed the sea.
Right.
Some went to Miskira Key. Some went to the United States, down in Texas, a lot of Caymanians, Port Arthur, they went about because in those days in Cayman there was nothing here.
Yeah.
Nothing here. So I grew up under my mother,
Right.
which she was a very strict woman. You know, most of the children in that time grew up under the mother.
Yes.
The father would only come home like probably 2 months out of every 2 years, or it fluctuates.
Right. And he was at sea.
Yeah, at sea. Yeah, my father died at sea.
Right.
But I grew up, like I say, with my mother. But let me tell you, right now in Cayman, you don't know when Sunday. There's no change in Sunday. In my time, Sunday, you could drop a pin at this airport, and you could hear it in Rock Hole. Very quiet. Sunday was the day. Although they had Sabbath keepers, but Sunday was the day.
That was the day
Nothing
for church.
happened. For church, yeah.
Yeah. That was
Everything
across the
was
island.
quiet. Yeah, across the island. Very quiet. Sunday, it wasn't no if, it was must. And when you come out of church, you would take the cake or the bread and take to your neighbor. Sick people and elderly people were very respected. I have a problem with that right now.
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
a problem with that.
Well, when we compare, your years of growing up to today, we can see changes across the spectrum. We talk about, the first question I asked you was, what was your neighborhood like? And you were able to, rattle off the names of the families that made up your neighborhood. When we talked about, your attitude you had towards your neighbor as well as your friends, sharing was the order of the day. Those things, sadly,
Don't exist
don't
no more.
exist anymore.
No, don't exist anymore. And the part with that, compared with traffic, that's another issue I have in Cayman now. But in those days, I remember Mr. Jim Arch, he was one of those that had a car in my area. It wasn't much cars. They probably, I know Mr. Craddock E-Bikes had his truck. Mr. Woody had his truck. Now, my grandmother house was right there where the Bod Merck's Plaza is, right across there, where it's a parking lot now. My grandmother had every fruit tree in the world there. But she had a long porch, the whole length of the house. That was the bus stop in them times.
Okay.
The people came from north side, but they only came not every day. They would come like twice for the week, sometimes one time for the week. But the transportation was Mr. Craddock E-Bank's truck or Mr. Wooded truck from East End. And they used to sit down on a piece of 2x12. That was the seat in the back of the old wooden truck.
Right.
And they would stop at my grandmother's house. She would have cornmeal porridge to give them if they wanted. And the people would walk about. Most of the women was women. They would walk about and do their errands.
Right.
Now in that time, they used to, the women, because all the men is gone to sea, and if they didn't have any children, the children was already grown, the women would come in town and go to court. They wanted to hear, remember now, we don't have no phones, no newspaper, we just live by radio.
I see. Okay.
No TV, they live by radio. But they used to communicate with each other.
Okay.
So all day the women there is sitting down in the court, then they would come by grandmother, and grandmother cook food and give them too. But when they coming from east end or north side, they're gonna bring the conchs, or they're gonna bring a piece of fish. And grandmother got the breadfruit there and the cassava and different things. And they eat. 3 o'clock, the truck come and pick them up and take them back up. That's how it was, the transportation in the days. Didn't have a road like this.
Right.
But I say that to say that with the cars that the owners, special people had, like wealthy people that could afford. I'm speaking for Mr. Pat Lonza and Mr. Jim Arch, Mr. Alvis Smith. He used to drive loon Cadillacs.
Okay.
Every year he would get a new Cadillac.
He had good taste.
Different colors.
Okay.
And you couldn't even lean on that. Even sometimes I remember as boy, we would look and he'd say, what are you looking at that for? Don't look at that too long, I don't want no color come off of it. It was particular, and he was right on, he was what they call the northern, he had Alfred Smith Bar, the Northern Bar.
Right.
That was the beginning of the Matilda Corner there. That you heard about the Matilda Corner years ago.
Yeah.
But those days, driving now, I remember Mr. Jamarch would sometimes send Jesse or one of those guys and ask my mother to give me permission to go for a little drive. In those days, when those people used to drive, Mr. Austin, they didn't drive fast, they drive timely, but the cars don't have no air conditioning in those days.
Okay.
But they would look at the different places, like going on West Bay Road. Those days, there wasn't no 7 Mile Beach, you know. It was only pine, weeping willow trees,
Okay.
and cocoa plums.
I see. The beach was sort of in the back
Yeah.
of all of that.
All that, yeah. But I'm talking about the driving. They would drive timely, and they would look, everybody would enjoy it. Say, oh, I didn't see this. Mr. Greenall putting this up, or, you know, like it's very slow and timely. Now, there are planes on this road. There are no cars,
Yeah.
you know. And I was so excited to go because my mother kept me tight. My mother kept me like a sissy.
Okay.
I was the last child, and she had nobody else. All the rest of the children had grown up and gone.
How many siblings did you have?
Well, I had 3 sisters and 2 other brothers.
Okay.
But now it's only my older brother and my sister Sally
Yes.
and my sister in West Bay.
I see.
All the rest passed on.
Do you still remain close with one another?
Yeah, we still remain close, very close. But nowadays, Cayman has grown so distance
Yeah.
from one another, and everybody is in the technology business now. But I remember quite clear, it was a Sunday, and Jesse came out and asked my mother to let me go for a little drive in the car because it was old Studebaker, Mr. Jamarch, had a green one.
Okay.
And that was top of the line in them
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
I'm talking about the early 60s, you know.
With the 8-track.
And I was so excited that I got in the car and slammed the door on my finger. And we went to West Bay Road by the old Holiday Inn. But the old Holiday Inn wasn't there then. But about that distance, they used to call that Holman Turn.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I'm familiar.
And my finger is in the car door.
Still?
And I didn't feel that till when I got back.
Wow.
And they opened the door, then I saw the blood like my finger. I was so excited.
Wow.
I didn't even feel that.
Wow. Wow. That's
So excited to go in a car.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know? And we drive, Mr. Austin, we drive timely. Those people and enjoyed the drive. You know, nobody come behind you and there wasn't no cars to blow you.
Yes. Yeah. When we talk about taking a drive, where would you drive to? Would you go West Bay, East End, North Side? Where would you drive?
No, not too far. We couldn't go that distance. That was too far. Road was bad in those days.
Right.
We would just go like around the town
Right. I
and see if we see anything like new.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Gotcha. You mentioned communication and modern conveniences, if you will. You grew up in a time when there wasn't a telephone in every home, let alone the internet, which of course we're all addicted to today. It must have been quite something. You have seen a number of inventions that we today take for granted come online for the very first time. What were some of those inventions that may have captivated you over the years?
Well, first time the TV came,
Okay.
it was black and white
All right.
and no sound.
Okay. Okay.
And we sitting down as children and watching, and we got to figure out, and we enjoying the movie.
Right.
In those days, you know, they were limited like cowboys and Indians and little karate movies on. And the Three Stooges,
Yes.
Fuzz and Night, and you know. But we watching black and white movie and no sound. And then after that, they came in with the track that you would push in the TV, and then you heard the sound, heard the sound. We were surprised, we were shocked, you know.
Yes.
Because we had an old man, I remember that when first time when the old phones come in, you know, the ring up ones, you know, you ring them up.
Yes, the
He
rotary
would,
telephone.
Yeah, he would, so his son had went off to sea, and one time he called home, you know, to the old phones here. But you had, not everybody had them neither. But you had to go to the government house
Right.
to receive calls. In those days, like, if my father wanted to talk to my mother, they would send, because they had to go through Jamaica with Morse code,
Okay.
and send a message and say, I want to talk to Mrs. So-and-so Sunday. Or they would know what time the ship getting into New York or in a port that they could connect on, because wherever you're calling from, you had to go through Jamaica.
I see.
And then Jamaica would connect you on here.
Okay.
And then I remember the old man is talking to his son. They told me this, my mother, that he was talking. He said, son, where you is? And he said, but Dad, I'm down in New Orleans. He said, but how you talking to me in New Orleans and I can't see you? You know, but
Right.
that ignorance, we didn't know.
Right. Right.
You know, we didn't know. Even technology wasn't around at that time.
Indeed. Cayman was at the time referred to as the island that time forgot. What was it like in terms of learning about what was happening in the wider world around you? Did you where did your news come from about the world, not outside of Cayman?
Well, the radio, we had a radio, we had AM radio them days, not
Right.
FM.
Okay.
And we also used to listen to Bonaire.
Okay.
Then we used to get a lot of information from that. And Jamaica. Jamaica had AM radio at that time, Rude Fusion.
Yeah.
And that's where we would get our news from. Otherwise not, no news.
Yes. Yes. Obviously, we talked about the inventions that have come online, the telephone, the radio, the television. But you've also, in your years of life, have lived through a number of world historic events, and maybe we can talk about a few of those. Very recently we witnessed the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and welcomed our new King Charles. But do you recall when Queen Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1952 from King George?
Yeah,
And was that a big happening in Cayman?
Yeah, it was a big celebration, very big. Everybody, went out in the town area. Well, the town hall in them time, that was the assembly.
Right.
Everybody was there, and my house on Mary Street was just less than 5 minutes.
Right.
So I would be there, and I remember those times it was a big, because those days everything was England.
Yes. Yes.
You know.
Right.
So if England coughed, we caught the flu.
Gotcha.
You know.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and I remember those celebration thing, and I remember when she also came on her boat, her yacht, out there.
Okay.
In town.
All right.
Yeah.
There's also been said history has a tendency to repeat itself. We in 2020 just went through the global pandemic of COVID, but also in the 50s they had the polio pandemic.
Whooping cough.
Whooping cough. Did polio and whooping cough definitely was in
the
Cayman,
worst.
but did polio ever come to Cayman?
Yeah. I had polio here in Cayman, but it wasn't as bad. But the whooping cough.
Right.
And those days, medicine was another thing.
Okay.
Everything, those old people was to the bush. And you know what we used to take for whooping cough?
Tell me.
Courage.
No kidding.
Courage.
How did you manage that?
And how my mother, the old people then used to mix it up, right? And then when you ready, they put that down, all the way down, and then they give you, it's like, because it would itch your lip,
Oh, it might itch your lip, your throat, everything.
You had to do it fast,
but
then right after that they give you like something to eat real quick, like a piece of breadfruit or something like that, or little fish gravy to wash it down and mix it up that it wouldn't affect you. That was very effective. My mother used to give me kerosene oil and brown sugar in a spoon.
Wow.
Few years back, I was telling a doctor about that. He said, "You crazy?" He said, that wasn't tested or studied. I said, "But those people live longer than we are living today."
Yes.
Everything we went to the bush for. Mr. Will Jackson, I still have every one of his books.
Yes.
He got one smoke pot. These are back to the Back to the Deep, I think it is.
Oh, Up from the Deep.
Up from the Deep.
Yes.
Read that.
Yes, I have.
Read that. That is where you find medicine and
Yes.
stuff in those days.
Indeed. What have been some of the, throughout your lifetime, what were some of the rewarding things about getting older? Has it been, the lifetime of knowledge that you continue to gather? Has it become the discounts at the movie theaters? Is it the best parking lots in parking spaces? What are some of the things that have been rewarding to you by getting older?
Now,
Yeah.
not much.
No?
I can tell you, not serious, not much. Not much at all. Parking lots. There, Mr. Austin, there is no regard. I don't know. Every day I sit down home and I meditate a lot and I reminisce. Nobody has no respect. In those days when I was growing up, the elderly were respected. First and foremost, and all of us as children, boys and girls, we learned that very fast. You have to respect this person. You have to do this for that person. They would go and check on you. Miss, the Austin mama sent me to see if you need anything today. Those days we didn't realize it,
Yeah.
but we're realizing it now,
Sure. Sure.
Like I say, we didn't have no technology,
Yeah.
but we had unity and we had love.
Mm-hmm.
The elderly is not respected in Cayman. I go all around and I see the elderly people can hardly stand up. They can hardly walk. When I was a police officer in the traffic department, I had a ride up there from the Northwest, I think in 1988. We built signs with Miss Joyce Hilton.
Yeah.
We made signs, big signs, the traffic department, me and Gilbert McLaughlin. And we stuck them up like business places, offices and stuff. Senior citizens and elderly, first priority.
Right.
They had seats, benches for people, elderly to sit down, and we had to give them first priority. Now, the young people, they see an elderly person, they knock them down. There's no. I spoke to the present premier about that as well. I showed him my write-up that I had from the traffic department, and he said, well, there's laws in place for the disabled, but I don't see any. I don't see any.
Yeah.
And they got people that sometimes come in town, a family member bring them in town for them to do their little errands, because elderly people sometimes they still want to do their own thing.
Of course. Strong
My
and
mother
independent.
always said a beholden pain is a bad pain. You can do it for me, but I won't do it. That's my comfort.
Right.
And when the elderly people come into town to do their business, they should have first priority.
Sure.
But it's not happening for the disabled. They need to put something in place
All right.
for the disabled.
Well, certainly to agree with the premier, there are a number of laws and benefits, discounts and other things that have been ruled out over time to the elderly. But like you say, you don't see it. The laws that support the elderly, you don't see them being enforced.
No.
So there's a lot of room for improvement. Speaking of improvement, and in closing, this program, this show airs over YouTube, and being a father of a young son, I know amongst the many things that they watch, YouTube is where young people can be found.
Yeah.
What advice would you, George Chollette, like to pass on to the next generation of young Caymanians?
Well, the answers to me, as you know, I've been a saved person for many years, over 40 years.
Yes.
I work in a church, and I grew up, Cayman Island grew up, he has funded it upon the seas. Cayman grew up as a Christian nation, Christian island. And nowadays, it's very hard because the world, we got to include the world when it comes to Cayman, because all these things that the younger generation is getting I know children in Cayman that don't come out of their room until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the day. And you can see them on their phones.
Yeah.
Their eyes are being affected
Yeah.
24 hours. They don't even watch television that long, you know. They grab a fast food. In those days, another thing, we didn't we didn't have no fast food. We had our food well cooked and hot,
Right.
and we ate on time. We were barefoot. We didn't get sick much. You buck your toe, you go in the salt water, but you show it down in sand first. Stop the bleeding, and then you go in the salt water. And when you come out, that's it.
Right.
Nowadays, you don't need people. Tell people you don't need a dining room table. Nobody sits at a dining room table anymore.
True.
You know. But for me, with the younger generation, you got to be focused, because people are getting away from this. That there is a supreme. People getting away from this. The whole world is getting away from it. But even scientists now are studying it's more than the Big Bang. It's more than the Big Bang. Me, I did 42 surgeries. 42.
Wow. Wow.
3.5 years I couldn't walk. Doctors, professors in the US, I would never walk again. Prayer is the answer to everything. But these younger generation right now, they're forgetting about the parents, the elderly. It's their time. This is their age. But they shouldn't forget their parents, the elderly. Because without their parents, they wouldn't be here.
Right.
And those days that we lived in, that we grew up in, were much better. Food, health-wise, we didn't have no medicines. We only had what they call bush medicines. But we were healthy. We were out in the sun. We ran up and down. We sweat. Like I said, we were barefoot and all of that stuff. If we got a cold, we would go in the sea.
Right.
Nowadays, what they're telling you, I have a friend that him and his wife just had a baby. And they said, so I said to them, because the child was born in December,
Right.
I said to him, well, have we given him water? Because water is the breath of life. No, the doctor said he can't give him no water till he reached 4 months. I said, what you said? I never heard that in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they won't give the child no water.
Wow.
Said that the doctor said, don't give the child no water, the baby no water until 4 months. So things have changed.
Yeah.
Technology, the Bible says knowledge would increase, you know.
Right.
So that is a fact.
Yeah.
But it's sad, Mr. Austin, the condition we deal with Cayman, that Cayman is in. Because what happened, the people that come here, they come from other bigger countries, and they bring their way of life here to us and make us accept it. Because years ago, the driving wasn't like how it is now. But the Caymanians learned, well, Mr. Austin, he from Cuba or he from Timbuktu, he driving like that, so he can drive like that too. This my island can drive like that too. So the Caymanians are the same way. They adopting from the people that is coming into the island.
Yeah. What they see around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it is very sad. I don't know the solution. The wiser ones got to find a solution. But I don't know when it's going to take, because it's a very bad situation that we are in Cayman.
Indeed.
All around.
Yeah. Yes. Well, certainly the one thing that is constant is change. And you certainly, over the course of your lifetime, which, by the way, shows no sign of slowing down, by the way. You still look young and vibrant and, full of life. But certainly change is a word that certainly I think you would agree that you experienced in your lifetime. Brother George, I want to thank you sincerely. I know you and I could talk on this subject at great length for hours, but they don't give me that much time. I want to thank you sincerely for being our guest here on Let's Talk, and for, I think, the education that you've provided to the younger viewers, the next generation, a little glimpse into Cayman what it once was as compared to what it is today, and hopefully they have a bit of an appreciation. I know the older persons who are watching today are enjoying very much. My mother, in particular, I know will
Hello,
enjoy.
Miss Ruby. We come a long way. Me and you was here before Austin.
That's right. That's right.
But
That's
Mr. Austin, real quick, remember those days we didn't have no electricity neither.
right.
No electricity. My mother got her first fridge from Mr. All in the E-Banks in Northside. Kerosene, a 1 gallon kerosene bottle underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And we had lamps.
Yes.
And remember mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. All of these people that are here in Cayman now, if it were mosquito time, I only want the mosquitoes in my time to come back for 1 week.
Yes.
Man, in Cayman you wouldn't find a soul in the Cayman Islands.
Everybody
Trust
would move.
me.
Everybody would
Trust
move.
me.
You're quite right.
You could do like this and catch them, Mr. Austin.
Yes. Yes.
So we lived through all of that.
Yes, yes. You mentioned kerosene. Just as an aside, I still have the original kerosene lamps that my grandfather had in his home. My brother and I.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look forward to the power going out just so we
Yeah.
can light them.
Yeah.
Just for that, again,
Yeah.
bit of nostalgia.
And remember, you had to study with them
Yeah.
kerosene lamps. You know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how you survived it with the smoke that they let off.
Yeah,
Boy. I
well-
don't know how most of my Caymanians didn't
Yeah.
die long before, but they were a resilient bunch.
Yeah.
Brother George, again, I thank you so much for sharing of your
You're
time
welcome.
with us
You're
and our
welcome.
audiences. And we will have you
Yeah.
back in studios to talk
Anytime.
about a myriad of subjects, not least of which the gambling subject that seems to be very topical. But that is
Yeah.
for another day. I want to thank you again for
You're
being
welcome.
our guests.
You're
And
welcome.
to our audiences, we again say thank you for taking the time to tune in, and we hope you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we have. If you did, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please, feel free to leave any comments you may have on our YouTube channel. Please tune in every Sunday at 2 p.m. for another episode of Let's Talk, exploring the issues affecting all of our lives. I'm your host, Austin Harris. Until next time.